Happy New Year.
Woo! We're back at it again. What's up, Jay?
What's up, Mr. Tai Tai?
You know what? This technology thing, just got me right on my brink of patience, but seems like it might just work out for us.
I guess we'll see what happens. 'Cause you're already blurry on your profile, my friend.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, here we go. So obviously in our previous conversation, we talked about vision and we were getting into that. We said that we were going to dive into possibly more mission for what tribal is, for what tribal means to us, and what could be created that could be called tribal. But before we dive into the mission, did you have any interpretation of our conversation last week based on vision or anything that changed as a result of our conversation?
A lot of ideas. I'm not sure we landed on what the vision is, which is fine for me as we're processing and trying to evolve it as a potter and a clay. There is my metaphor. But yeah, I feel like for my so sequentially also within sharing more with my heart, I'm biased to say it's good to know from a cascading perspective what's getting clarity on the vision, because I can't really determine what my mission is or propose ideas for mission in the sense of 3 to 5 years of where we'd like to be that embodies the vision unless the vision is clear. So that's my predisposition as a proposal. I'm more than happy to pivot off of that and go into any other direction, which is fine, but just putting my cards on the table.
Yeah, so what I think I'm hearing you say is that you're not super clear on what the vision is quite yet.
Correctamundo.
Okay. Well, just some notes that I had from our conversation last time. We took a little meta approach about what vision is, really. We have to know what vision is to create one, I think. And differentiated that between the mission as well. So a lot of our conversation was, well, what is vision and what is mission? But some of the North Star values, as it were, that we came across last time was safety, community, and connection that facilitates best versions of self, possibly even recuperates or regenerates environment and nature. Not only limited to the 5 senses was something that you said as well. So it's not just about, what we're feeling, touching, hearing, emoting, but on a much deeper level, we're creating those things as well to bring us back to an essence that you like to refer to. Some of what we went over, does that sound familiar?
Yes, sir.
We also talked about really what kind of level we wanted to dive into as far as our offerings go, right? We talked about the virtual support, we talked about the daily support, and we talked about the bigger immersive support as well. And what excited you the most was the immersive deep dive with community, right?
I mean, if I had to prioritize, that feels good.
Mm-hmm. Does that seem like it's changed since our conversation, or does that still feel true for you?
No, it's still true for me. What I probably will say is I respect each one of those different ways have their own inherent value, which I respect and appreciate, and I have a drawing towards. But if I were to say in proportion, what's the most draw in this moment would be the immersive type stuff to unplug from the habitual day in and day out, and immerse, and then integrate, reintegrate back into where I was, and in nickel and dime, or go balls to the wall in regards to implementing and experiencing what it's like to put into practice what I immersed myself with.
Yeah, that's something that you alluded to, is like really in the things that we've experienced together so far, a lot of the integration comes, when we're just with each other, right? It's not even necessarily at the peak experience. Um, and how we're essentially regarding these levels of what we can create as different levels of healing and growth and support. And really, we're just trying to figure out the priority of how we, you and I, and whoever else is involved want to create that, right? Is it going to be a retreat center or retreats of some kind? Is it going to be that daily brick and mortar that we could visit? Is it going to include the app or online support of some kind as well? And really, I think we're leaning into all of the above. It's just a matter of what comes first.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stage to can put every option on the table, as well as try to not be so blinded on my biases and be open to not even knowing what I could be open to. I mean, I don't know, something
So,
along those lines.
so what's going to solidify a North Star for you?
I mean, I guess the question always boils down to is what are we really ultimately wanting to accomplish?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
So,
so, sorry.
yeah, I love that. And I think that that's why vision and mission, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because you can't necessarily do one or have one without the other, I think.
What do you mean have one without the other? What's the one and what's the other?
Because, well, you cannot have mission without a vision, I believe. And I
Okay.
don't think
I
that,
wanted to follow you. I didn't know what you meant by other with the polarity in your comment. I was just wanting to make sure I was following. That's all.
yeah. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that, though? Can you have mission without vision or vision without mission?
I mean, I guess you can try. Um, I mean, listen, I guess at the end of the day, most people will probably say successful entities have some kind of mission and vision and values that guide its principles and its decision making and what you say no to, what's in scope and what's out of scope. Knowing that for the most part, at least initially, can't be all things to all people. At least that's a story. That's a pretty predominant story. So, and I'll label it as a story because it just is. I don't know. I'm not intimately aware of the statistical science behind how true is that statement. But I know from my experience, most corporations on some level have mission and vision and etc. And values.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it feels in this moment appropriate to be clear about that, and I think it also plays into um, everything else downstream, right? How whatever gets marketed, whatever gets shared, people want to know what's in scope, what's out of scope. Are you solving world hunger, or are you dealing with a certain less scoped initiative?
Yeah.
So I think it's important. It allows us to communicate and everything else.
Yeah.
So nailing that down makes sense. I mean, as I'm hearing myself talk, what popped into my head is if I were to try to consider all of the totality of our conversations, it is um, creating a sustainable tribal community. We can play with the language or abandon this. Establishing and sustaining a tribal community um, for uh, holistic health or for the healthiest community, for a healthy tribe, some shit like that. Um, anyway, I'm just going to say it because I was thinking of it while we were talking and I don't want to lose it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you said earlier about what problem we're trying to solve is really important. I don't think any important thing comes to fruition in this world without solving a problem, right? Like if we didn't have any problems, we would just be, right? And we obviously, as humans, perceive many problems and therefore create many things.
yeah.
So a while ago, this was several years ago, I kind of created this fun little mission statement formula. This is just based on a statement that I was creating for myself, but I'll just bounce some of these ideas off of you and see if there's anything, and we've already alluded to it a little bit, that might help us kind of stick to a mission of some kind, and maybe that'll help formulate the vision a little bit more. But the first thing that I listed in the mission statement formula was all the things that I'm passionate or curious about. So, what kind of things in general are you passionate and curious about?
Um, Probably most curious about why people tick the way they tick. I've always been fascinated. Why do certain people do X and others do Y? Why are some people appear to be successful while others are not? I've also learned that people who appear to be successful on one level usually are miserable on another level. Is there a thing such as multifactorial or multi-dimensional satisfaction or happiness with life? Can that truly be attained? I mean, those things I get really curious about. Um, Naturally, know yourself or know thyself. Who is thyself? Or what am I? So uh, I think the existential questions are, to me, the juicy ones that bring about the most curiosity for me. At least my theory is because how we answer that one question of who or what am I is the portal by which either our lens is clear, somewhat dirty, and absolutely filthy, and you can't see the forest from the trees. And so, by answering that one question, we take on identities, conclusions, perceptions, um, conditioning becomes rampant. I can go on and on. So that's why I have always appreciated or come to appreciate after, almost 53 years of life, that to me is the essential question I think we have to answer for ourselves.
Now, is there anything that you're passionate about that may be different from what you're curious about?
Am I passionate about? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about trying to answer those questions. Egoically, there is a passion for doing things right based on my Enneagram type. Um, there is a passion to try to be as integrous as I can. Uh, Other passions, learning that if I don't have my health and being passionate about my health, I can't have the energy and the quality to meet the environment life's demands. I mean, sooner or later, my tank runneth empty, and I'm not putting money into the tank or putting gas into the tank. I can't meet those demands short term and definitely medium and long term. So I'm passionate about trying to sustain that for myself so that I personally age with grace. And I don't want people wiping my ass at 60 and 70, or at least ideally, unless it's certain people, then I guess I don't mind.
It doesn't take you being 60 or 70 to have that done. I've already crossed that bridge.
Yeah, touche. Um, I've, yeah, I'm having flashbacks. Jesus. Uh, um, but yeah, I guess those are the things that initially come to
Okay.
mind. And what
So
about
now
yourself? I'm
list
curious. You're
list
asking me all these freaking questions. What about you?
well, I'm helping you discover something. We'll get there.
All right, all right.
So
Coach
the
me
next
away,
thing,
Frank.
list like 3 to 5 things you perceive to be major world problems.
We don't know who we are or what we are. That's the number one problem of society. Um, I think we don't have compassionate yet functional, healthy limits and boundaries. Number 3, I think we spend an awful lot of time thinking that the the outside world is in control of the creation of my inner world.
Mm,
So I think those 3 things would stand out for me.
cool.
Yeah.
Now list 3 to 5 of your values.
Um, respectful communications, fighting fair versus unfair, do the best of not hiding while acknowledging that we all can hide and do hide. I think being authentic, or as vulnerable and honest as I can be, moment to moment. My health, the mantra, your health is your wealth. That's a value in prioritizing that. Learning to prioritize my peace over making others happy is another value that I think feel like is important. Um, I mean, I can pull out my dirty dozen personal values list, but that's what I'm pulling from my mental memory here.
Okay. What are a couple really important symbols or images to you that you've noticed as a recurring maybe metaphor or lesson, or just something that really is curious to you that you've seen? It's more visual.
Well, I've always I like the yin yang symbol. I mean, there's a respect for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's some animals that I respect that I know you know. So my turtle, um, a silverback gorilla, and an elephant. Those are the 3 that I really have an affinity for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a couple of tattoos on my body that reflect the symbols that I think um, are important. Some of which I've already mentioned. I have a tattoo in Arabic from Z. Well, it's inspired by my interactions with her, and I put in Arabic on my forearm of live and let live. That seems to be like a really important lesson for me for sure.
Mm.
Just learning it again and I was reminded of it this week again.
This week in particular, you said?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, and it's interesting on a tangent. Like we've been doing our gong here, right? And so one of the things I've been contemplating adding to my gong, which seems to be a fucking steep challenge because I'm on day 1 for the first 4 days already. I keep on failing at it. But my gong is that I don't express judgments. I need to keep them to myself. So no
Oh.
expression of judgments. Number 2, no offering of unsolicited opinions unless I'm invited. So those 2, that heads and tails of that quarter, um, I I have it on my refrigerator. Go 100 days. Zayn is walking by me with an apple, flashing her boobs in front of me. Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, I
Make sure,
know.
got to make sure that we check the box on YouTube that says this is not for kids. All right, cool.
Touche.
So those are,
Yes, but yeah, that's at the end. Just to close the loop. Yes, that is kind of an idea of live and let live, right? I mean, just giving a tangent example. So
mm-hmm.
those are going just to close the loop. Those are examples for me around the symbols that you're taking me through.
Okay. Now, what are some really important skills that you believe you have?
Thinking systems thinking, using my gut to recognize patterns, and what I mean by that is not necessarily analyzing data and looking for patterns through being analytical, but using my gut instincts to pretty quickly size up and intuit or instinctually have a gut sense of patterns and situations. Um, I would say a functional sense of loyalty. Um, my skills. A planner. I think I can generate a lot of creative ideas in regards to efforts and things and design and strategy, and take the big picture and funnel it all the way down into what will I do on Tuesday about making that happen. Um, have a pretty good success track record with that. Um, yeah, I'll pause there for there. I think that's sufficient.
Okay. Lastly, what are maybe 3 to 5 of your favorite delivery methods of your skills?
Delivery methods. I'm assuming you're talking about like teaching styles or sharing styles or showing up.
You like calling people on the phone to talk about systems? Do you like being with people in an environment where you're drawing on a whiteboard and teaching like a teacher? Like, what is the way that you like expressing those skills?
Well, it's situational. So I try to advocate, if we want to go back to the earlier question, around having situation awareness and trying to intuit who am I talking to? What is the situation? What's the context? Where might be the resistance? And how do I customize what I'm going to say for the situation? I don't always do that, but I know that I can do that, and I do that a lot. Um, so to that end, as a bridge, I would say I like being situational. For some people, I like being kinesthetic and showing and doing it with them or model it. Kind of you see it, you do it, you teach it, model. I like that. I do like an element of sharing, kind of having a vibe of an all teach, all learn, exchanging. So I get energized by um, yeah, I'm biased with certain things that I think, okay, I got this topic nailed down, but for the most part, I know I can do that at times for sure. And other times I do appreciate the iron sharpens iron idea where things get sharpened in a group setting versus thinking too narrow or just too siloed. Let me say it that way. Um, I think there's something to be said about virtual, but I like hands-on and interacting, hands down, more than virtual. But I can appreciate virtual, and I do virtual all the time. Um, I don't know. I think those are the things that I'm contemplating in this moment. I like time to reflect. I think of it as inhalation, exhalation. You breathe in and breathe out. You get some good time here, and then I'll digest our conversation. And if I have other thoughts, then throughout the week to give myself space for, or if I journal about certain things, or have conversations with other people about this is how I'm experiencing it, and I ask them either to help me flesh out my thinking further by asking me questions, or if I say X, Y, and Z, how do you feel? How do you feel your own body when I make these statements? And then they share back with me. So, being reciprocative, is that what's the word? Reciprocity, reciprocal. No, God, it's on the. I can't even enunciate the word I'm looking for. It's like a boomerang. Reciprocal. It's gonna bother me now. Okay. Anyway, but
Dementia,
this
dementia
yeah
setting in.
this yeah no this back and forth dialogue. Whether it's just listening, asking open-ended questions, asking challenging questions like, "Are you really sure about that, Jason, and why?" So there
Cool.
we have it.
Thanks for sharing. So that sequence of questions, though, what
Mhm.
have you noticed throughout that sequence, if anything?
I'm sure there's a pattern there for sure. There's an obvious patterning. I the what else I know is that some of these things I'm very familiar with, so it's a bias. It is a curiosity. So those are the things that I'm definitely aware of.
So that sequence right there is what I've used to constantly remind myself of my own personal mission statement. So this is the way it goes. It goes, I, so and so, my name, obviously Tyler, commit to offering my skills, what we went over with you, through my preferred delivery methods, the way that you like to communicate your skills, as we went over, to embody the life images and values that we talked about. So those symbols and also your values, to be able to further understand my passions and curiosities. And with a deeper understanding of myself, I can then apply what I've learned to helping the healing of big world problems. So through uncovering all of those different things, I kind of lay it out in that statement for myself to create a mission statement. To me, I'm just kind of uncovering all those different things that I think can help create a mission. So now hearing that and how I laid it out for you, what am I missing? What else needs to be added there? What needs to be more organized, or how would you do it differently? And I can also say that back to you again if you like.
Just to clarify, are you asking me what would I change differently, or what do I think is missing from what you shared about yourself, about how
No,
you've
what's
gone through the journey?
missing? What do you believe might be missing to create a mission or formulate a mission of some kind, either for an
I still think,
individual?
yeah, I still would go back to that. Until there's absolute clarity with the vision, the mission is a hodgepodge.
Mm-hmm.
I can go through all of that, which I appreciate the exercise. I can go through all of that. But if I don't have a North Star to point it towards, then I know from my own experience and talking and working with others, um, we can get easily sidetracked with all kinds of different things and distractions and shiny new objects and toys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that North Star is the essentially modality that captures our skills to be able to solve the problems we want to solve.
All right. Well, I guess I don't care about the skills relative for me personally relative to the mission of the vision. Really? Okay, you can cut that part out. Um, I still think independent of skill, I need to know what is it that I'm trying to accomplish. Because if I know what I'm trying to accomplish, then I can assess, do I have the skill currently or not to get there? And or if I don't, then do I need to outsource that and hire someone to fill those voids to help me get to my North Star? do I need to take a class or go immerse myself in something in order to build my own human capital to close that gap? It tells me about how I want to approach and who I might approach for funding um, or support in some kind of way. So that would be my only counter to that would be
So,
my primary counter to what
so
you
you're
shared.
saying that your skills actually don't come into play when deciding where the North Star is.
No, I would say more of um, not for me. Uh, I guess you could. I guess one could. I could see myself arguing the point to say, well, the skills that I have to this point, generally speaking, are going to reflect what I want to do, what I've been wanting to do in life, and therefore, in theory, maybe the vision would be birthed out of that progression. Um, but if I just wanted to put everything aside and just say, what is my North Star? I tend to think that that is a question that needs its own TLC. And then from there, uh, I'm not, I don't think I'm naive to say that there is not an inherent connection about my talents and my skills and my knowledge that is connected to the vision. I acknowledge that. And um, I could apply my talent, skills, and knowledge with any industry and in theory feel okay. Or at least I could say, argue that I ought to feel okay by if I have the chance to do it. Um, if Big Pharma or Pfizer wanted to hire me for my talent, skills, and knowledge, that they just gave me like, you're unleashed, go fix our system so that we can deliver more pharmaceuticals to the world. There might be a part of me that says, okay, I can get a big ass check and big benefits, and at the same time, I get to do systems design, and I get to quote unquote sell myself on the idea that if delivering of medication or whatever the jabs will make the world a more healthier place. Um, and I would say, in my experience, there's a lot of people, I've coached a lot of people in very big companies, and they are miserable. I mean, they're working 70 to 80-hour work weeks, the grind. They love, in part, they love what they do. I mean, it aligns with their education and all their skills, but I can't say that they're happy or fulfilled, whatever word you want to use. Um, so, being fulfilled and happy and having a North Star, I mean, that's why I think, I appreciate in particular Alan Watts, the philosopher, where he's like, learn to do what you love and try to get paid for it. You know, so that's why I'm a little biased to say answer the first question, Jason, or Jason and Tyler. What's the vision? And so as a result of that, um, does that move me? Does that align as we cascade and answer the questions? What values would then support that?
Cool. So, what do you love to do that you want to get paid for?
Hmm. Well, I enjoy coaching. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy learning. I enjoy connection. I enjoy fostering a community of like-minded and hearted folks. Um, I like the idea of ultimately trusting folks, in a community type setting.
So that doesn't, I mean, the coaching part does, but the rest not necessarily creates the container for what you could actually get paid for. Um, So what I'm trying to have you do here is kind of funnel yourself into this vision. So
Okay.
what is it that Jason needs to do for himself to decide what that is?
What does Jason need to do for himself to decide what that is? Ask your question differently, please.
Sure. What's a system that you have in place for yourself to decide where a North Star can be?
It has to fit within my current state of values, where I want to spend my time, where I want to uh, create or co-regulate with others.
Okay. But
Um,
you're saying that this is where it has to be, but like, where is that? Like, what is the thing? What is the route?
oh well, I don't know. I have to create a North Star first to determine where the mission and then the values. To me, the mission and the values start. It's a cascade. You know, where we'll just take it from a geographic. Where's the North Pole? What's my North Pole? Be clear with that. Then the mission says, okay, no pun intended, get your inner compass. And then you have your mission, where you gonna
Great.
where
Great.
do you want to be in 1, 3, and 5 years from now in order to get to ultimately the North Pole.
Okay, Jason,
And
where's the North Pole? Where do you pull this North Pole from? Because you
out of my
keep going
ass.
back, you keep going back and forth. Well, I got to find this North Pole and create this North Pole, and then the mission and the values and all. That kind of determines getting there. And like, okay, but where? How are you going to find this North Pole? Where does it come out of?
But you have to consider the question, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish?
Okay, so what is it you're trying to accomplish?
Um, uh, I want to accomplish. Well, I was alluding to it before, dingus. um, I said to you, like, my idea is that to create a a tribal community uh, of holistic health, of some shit like that, where we can coexist and create a tribe setting, um, so that we can manage life, explore life.
Great. So what you basically just said there was your North Pole, right? What else do you need
Yeah,
to
but
do for that?
go ahead. What
No, I
else do
mean,
I need to do for that? I
yeah, I mean,
think
what
just
else?
clean it. Clean. I just fine. I mean, I think uh, the ingredients are there. It needs to be massaged a little bit so that I can put it in the oven and bake it in a way that
Let's
when it
bake it.
comes out, I'm like, I'm all for you. I'm all with you.
Sh- shake it before you bake it.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, so hey, listen, you're very meta, you're very like philosophical on this. I'm purposely probing you here to create some more direction because that's what's going to need to happen. If something is going to come to fruition, we're talking about baking it and shit. Well, here we are, we're baking it.
Um, yes, but my challenge to you is that you can't bake. You got to get the ingredients first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I can't start shaking and baking until I have the ingredients and I'm aligned on these are the ingredients that need to go into the cake that I need to create, that I need to stir, that goes to be into the oven to be baked.
So first you need a North Pole, but then you need the ingredients to understand the North Pole.
Well, let me say it this way. I'm not sure what angle you're playing, what you're coming from. So I'll put it out there. All I'm saying is the general concept that I've thrown by you twice around uh, the North Star could be around a tribal community that focuses on connection and holistic health and some other shit, whatever it is. So that's a very loose vision. Like it needs some massaging. Like here are the
Yeah.
ingredients. Here's the dough. It needs to be beaten up, kneaded, massaged.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a square? Is it a circle? Is it a triangle type, uh, dough we're going to create it into? So that to me is about back and forth and massaging there without going into, well, where do I want to be? What's the skills? What's the values? Independent of really making sure we're massaging point A. So in my mind's eye, the mission, values, goals, planning, execution are all cascaded down. I'm getting clear about, okay, this feels good for me the way this is stated as a mission, as a vision statement. That's all.
Cool. Okay. So where do we go from here?
Well, I'm curious about what your opinion is on some of the loose language I used around a North Star, a vision.
Well, as far as the language goes, it's too loose, in my opinion.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. Like that's the whole point. Like, okay, what do you got back? Like, refine
Yeah.
it some more, my friend.
Yeah, I'm saying we gotta tighten the reins.
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean, so listen, when I think vision, I think what is it that I'm seeing that I believe can hold the effect that we're trying to create? What's the container that can hold the effect that I'm trying to create or the problem I'm trying to solve? So, as we've discussed, the different levels of what we can offer, all in regards to community and health, right? I'm saying that
Okay.
we are creating or will create an alliance that has a multifaceted offering system to help people heal with other people. To me, that's the vision. That's basically
Okay.
it. And then the mission is like, okay, these are the maybe more clear modalities or processes or steps to take us from A to B and with whom. For example, the Holistic Health Alliance, blah, 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 is here to serve the community of wherever we are to start. And to do so, we're going to offer a blah, blah, blah set of modalities to accomplish overall systemic health and change in our community. Is basically how I lay out the mission.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Um, in hearing it, I'm okay to continue to progress with it. It will need some refinement, but yeah, sure. I'm
Yeah, of
totally
course,
down
it's
with
not
it.
specific to what we're doing, but that's more of the structure that I'm considering. Um, refine in what way, though? What do you feel like needs to be refined?
If we want to stick to the principle, we can deviate, I guess. But if we want to stick to 12 words or less, what's the vision? Ultimately, 12 words or less. What's the
Oh,
mission?
yeah.
And then what are our guiding values that we can use on a day to day to hold self and others accountable to and support the decisions that are needed to be made? So are our decisions aligning with our values?
Okay. Well,
And then are the decisions not only aligned to the values, but do they get us closer to embodying the mission and fulfilling our vision? I mean, that cascading sequence is one way, not the only way, but one way I think about answering your question.
okay. So let's just, because we've come across values several times now, let's just jump there. What are values that you want to consider in what we're creating?
I've shared some already. There's a 5 or 6 that I shared
Go.
in
What are
our
those again? So
conversation
I
already.
can. I'm going to note those.
Respectful communications, learning how to fight fair versus unfair, authenticity versus deceit, autonomy, functional community, or let me say it this way. I would say a functional codependence on tribe in a community. There's a lot to that statement, but if we want to get into it, I'll get into it. I mean, those are some things that definitely.
Any other values in general that you want to carry with you in whatever you create?
I mentioned, our health is our wealth. I mean, like the 6 foundational principles are constant embedding in daily life. Being honest with yourself in the presence of other people.
Is there any different lens that you would take into business? Any other values?
I think we need a value or values around team dynamics and teamwork.
So what, like what?
The acknowledgement and the leverage of everyone's individual or unique talents and skills and knowledge, while also the willingness for all of us, or let me say it this way. We need to manage people's blind spots, including our own, in a community setting. Like there needs to be accountability, very clear and explicit respectful accountability.
Now, is that after withholding judgments, or?
I don't think it can. I mean, I don't think that would be
kidding.
honest. Yeah.
Kidding based on your gong. Because to hold somebody accountable based on their blind spots that we perceive is to hold an opinion or judgment of what we perceive to be their blind spots.
Yes, and if we want to go into like using our journeys language, I'll use that just because it's a shared model that we have. The literal, i.e., our behaviors, are what they are. So if we say that I'll see you on Tuesday at 3:00 for an important meeting and you don't show up, having a follow-up conversation about what happened, and you're like, oh, I fell asleep and I slept in, respectfully, that's bullshit. Now, if you had a medical emergency or you got a shitty call, or we can deal with that. But I mean, I think there is very clear distinction between what one does or doesn't do versus how that is interpreted by another. And I put in a cheap plug, like if everyone took my assessment, then we could all say, okay, everyone knows Jason's bias towards that he probably thinks his version is the right way to do it versus being wrong. Tyler's bias is that he by default wants to connect and ensure connections and might be willing to look the other way. And, if we all gave voice functionally as best as we can, and the more that you grow, the harder this is, but the more that we're willing to be transparent about our blind spots and be called out on it for us to consider how it might be playing out, I think is really important, at least from a core nucleus of trying to grow something, and then have those difficult conversations and agree to disagree or debrief at the end of it to say, this is my take-home points.
Yeah.
And they may not be, like, if you and I got into it, we would just say, okay, how do we debrief from a heated conversation? An hour later, a day later, or whatever, and say, okay, well, here's my takeaway.
Having strategies.
I'll be honest with you, like, yeah, for sure. So I think those have to be played out a little bit in our values in some way, shape, or form. Um, so that's what I mean by team dynamics, those few. Um, some businesses get into the idea that you make collaborative decisions and then you support it no matter what. Like if you're in the room as part of the group and there is a consensus or there needs to be a debate and battle, but once the consensus is made, then everyone is going to do the best to make sure that whatever decision is made is as successful as possible and doesn't play Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah.
Certain principles like that in regards to managing attitudes and behaviors and sabotage. I mean, you can just flip the script and say, okay, what makes human beings want to sabotage shit? What facilitates gossip? What facilitates undermining? Limiting beliefs, like putting, and then just writing the inverse of that in regards to values, maybe.
Cool. So now, in what you just heard yourself say of all those values, how does that create more clarity for you?
It just says to me, be really clear with your values from a systemic standpoint. Individual, leadership, management, teams, how you interface with the community. What is the brand? What's the image of the brand and the reality of the brand?
Okay. So if you're to distill those values down into maybe a sentence, maybe 12 words or less, maybe 5 words, how would you distill all that down into your values in which you'd want to carry through something that you're going to create and put in the world?
I respectfully wouldn't do that. I mean, I would stick with developing my values and say these are the 10 to 12 or 8 values that will govern our decision making and what we need to be sensitive to.
Did you say 8 to 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there could be a differentiation of the values that you maybe show your market, like, hey, this is what we're doing here, and this is what is being perceived by the customer or the market. But then there's also internally facing values, right? So there's kind of a difference in those things. Would you agree? At least maybe more how you would distill things or elaborate on things.
I'd have to think and consider more of that. On the surface, I'd say no. Like for example, Amazon. They have, I think, 14 business leadership principles that they eat, breathe, and sleep every single day. They practically have it all. Every single employee has it almost memorized.
Mm-hmm.
So every decision gets funneled through those 14 principles.
Yes, but you literally just proved my point that every single employee knows those things. What Amazon consumer knows those things?
The Amazon consumer knows that the consumer is king.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the way that we're communicating the values then is different. So the Amazon principles for success or leadership are those 14 things. Consumer knows consumer is king.
Okay, well, that's not what I heard or understood your question to be, but okay.
You get what I'm saying now?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. At the end of the day, how does a company's values, to what degree or how does that show up and is an experience for the customer, and what do we want to make sure that they walk away from? Like, one of their principles is that everything must be done on behalf of the customer or the consumer. That's their internal principle.
Mm-hmm.
Among many others, right? I'm paraphrasing one of their principles from Recall. ultimately, it is the customer having a phenomenal customer experience. That's what the customer knows.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so all I'm saying is what we do internally is translated into an experience for the customer, the consumer, the member, the client, and that there is a takeaway marketing message. I mean, it's really a marketing message that you as the customer are our number one priority. And that's the value, the externalized value, which has tentacles in the 12 or 14 leadership principles internally to the company.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in understanding and diving more into the values, both internally and externally facing, does that funnel any more clarity into the vision for you?
No.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I feel like what you've said is that understanding more of the values could possibly lead to that, but you just said no.
I mean, I guess I said it could. I think it's just a tomato, tomato. I don't know. I think of it as that's why I think it's important. It's a cascading experience. Yes. Are there feedback loops? Absolutely. Are we iterating? Absolutely. But fundamentally, if I'm clear on my vision, then I'm going to get clear on my mission. Then I'm going to get clear with what are the values that I need to have in place to fulfill the mission and achieve the vision. And so to me, it's just a sequential cascading impact of
Mm-hmm.
dominoes.
Okay.
And then there are loops, right? There's loop closing. And so as you refine some of the values, then you can question, well, did I really mean that about the vision? Or how does this now impact my thinking? Because my thinking is a little bit different than it was an hour ago about my vision with the language that we're using and how we're using it. And does it still align? So I'm not suggesting that there isn't an iteration. I just think fundamentally 80 for the 20, it is a top down influence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as those levels now, that cascading effect, where do we stand?
Where do we stand? So I think we have some loose language around a vision of a tribal community uh, of holistic health, of connection. I think you articulated some other words that I appreciate too. So when you were reading off your iPad, and then there's these different modalities in regards to the mission um, that you shared, which I appreciate, which needs to be sent. There needs probably, I would propose, need some level of sensitivity for sequencing. So we're not drinking out of the fire hose. And then, we have, I haven't heard from you yet, but about some values that would further guide our debates, discussions, alignment, brainstorming, trying to just figure all of the different ways of services and ideas and how we make decisions and how we'll hold ourselves and others accountable and all the other fun stuff to something, which is the mission and vision. So in loose terms, that feels more clear for sure than when we started.
Cool. Well, we're about an hour in this time around. So if you want to hear what I would say, then let's do it next time. And we'll kind of clarify my values if you'd like. But for all you listeners and viewers, appreciate you being with us. Jason, you want to wrap up with anything or summarize or anything you're curious about leaving us with?
I look forward to hearing your It's funny. I was doing 90% of the fucking talking. I'm like, I wonder what the fuck what his statements are. So you'll punt it to next week, which is cool. So it's like a good book. I'm waiting to hear what's the next chapter about your perspectives and opinions and ideas. Seeing how the shared ingredients get morphed into something potentially better than it being by our own individual thoughts and ideas. And continuing to massage. Maybe next week we can go back to not only first prioritizing hearing what you have to say, but going back to the vision and putting more crisper language around it, ultimately getting to 12 words or less if we can.
Okay.
Or, maybe we go from the 30 words that we currently have down to 20. I mean, I don't know, but keep on shaping and molding that every conversation that we have until we're like, you know what, for now, this is good enough. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is good enough for now to move on and spend more substantive time in the mission and massaging that and to other conversations, right? So what's the strategy? In person, virtual, combination, location, uh, being clear about what we mean by tribal and actually rolling up our sleeves and defining each one of these terms and what they mean. I'm assuming people would want to know, what do you mean by fucking tribal? I mean, there's a lot of different versions of perceived tribes out there in the holistic health community, and what makes us different, what makes us unique, or what would make us unique and different, what might be the same. I don't know.
Yeah. Cool. So next week we're going to distill it down a little bit further, try to create a little beautiful constraint and maybe 12 words or less for the vision. So we can kind of let that marinate throughout the course of the week and then take it even further from there.
Sounds good.
Cool. Per usual, hugs and kisses, everybody. Hugs and kisses, Jay.
Hi, brother.